I'm going to show you how to create the ultimate black and white conversion. Hi, I'm Joel Grimes, and when I started out in photography back in the film days, and I had to process my film and go into the darkroom, make a print, there was a goal that I had was to make and get a print that had all the tones and the greatest amount of value I could between pure black and pure white. Now in the days of digital, we are in great times, it's a little different. You have to understand how to get that process to get the ultimate result you can. When I studied black and white in the old days under the film, I studied Ansel Adams and I used the zone system. So I've really had a keen eye at looking at tonal value, the changes in values, especially in things like gradient skies, or say if I'm photographing a Harley Davidson motorcycle and I have the chrome and I want all the tones that I can and the transitions there. So how can we get and understand the greatest way of taking a digital file and making it into a black and white and getting all the tones that we want in the right spot? Now, color is very forgiving to our eyes. It's a thing, and I've noticed this even from the days of the film days, is that color is sort of forgiving. Black and white is not forgiving. So if you don't get your tones right in black and white, it does not look right. So it's actually a great exercise to practice your photography in shooting black and white, because you have to learn how to get everything right in your tones and everything. So that's why we started out in the old days. Well, I think it was probably more because of just the way photography was, but we started out in black and white and then we went from there to color. So today I'm a big fan of black and white, and I think hopefully you are too, and this is why you're watching this. So we're going to talk about a few things that will help us understand how digital works. I'm not going to get into too much of this because I have tutorials that go in for an hour or more on just bit depth. But I want to give you the basics, and there are some of you out there that are engineer-minded that you can go and do a little more research. I say engineer-minded, but you want more technical behind the scenes. I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to the Adobe people. I've talked to people that understand bit depth and have what I call a PhD in bit depth. So let's talk about this idea of creating, again, a tonal range that is as smooth as we can possibly get in the digital world. So we have to talk about bit depth. So if we get more bit depth, we get more tones and transitions. So the more bit depth we get, the more transitions we get. And when we look at numbers, I'm going to show you some numbers in a minute, we're looking at mathematics or in theory. In the real world, it's a whole lot different, but we can still see the results, and I'm going to show you those in a minute, what things look like in the real world. That's what's most important to me. So mathematics and all the numbers mean little to me. What I want to see is the final and say, okay, I'm getting a better result. So if you have a camera today, the chances are that you are capturing in 14-bit. Now, my first camera, I think, captured in digital camera was 12-bit. Now, 99.9% of all cameras on the market are 14-bit. If you bought a medium format, a Hasselblad with a leaf back or whatever they have on those, many of those medium format backs, or some of them, have the ability to capture in 16-bit. Some of the medium formats are still 14-bit, but there's a rare opportunity for you to get a 16-bit capture. So almost everything is 14-bit. All right, so 14-bit comes in, you open it up. If you open it up in Bridge or Lightroom, if you bought Photoshop or Lightroom, it defaults in, guess what? Working in an 8-bit sRGB environment. So you've just thrown away a huge amount of information by the default that Adobe gives you. So you have to set your parameters in Bridge or Lightroom to work in 16-bit environment, and change the color space to either 1998 Adobe or say ProPhoto or another color space that you might like. I use 1998 Adobe 1998. That's the general one across the board. So when I teach a workshop, I mention this and people go, huh? They go to their laptop and they go, oh, I've been working in 8-bit for the last 10 years. They didn't know you could change it to 16-bit. So I hope you maybe already have learned something. Check your parameters and make sure that you are working in a 16-bit environment. Now, you take a 14-bit file, you work in a 16-bit environment, it does not add 2 extra bits of information. You still have only 14 bits of information. Get that? Just makes sense? Okay? But you're working in a 16-bit environment. So you're not throwing away any information, you're not gaining anything by going into 16-bit, but you want to work at a 16-bit environment. How do we increase our bit depth to go from 14 to say 16 or 16 to 32? Well, there's only one way I know of. That is called HDR. You are capturing a under normal overexposure and you're blending that into, so you're taking shadow detail out of one image, you're taking the highlights down in another image and you're blending it all in and you're increasing your overall bit depth. That's a beautiful thing. Now, you can't shoot HDR on everything. I do HDR on a lot of portraits. A lot of ad campaigns that I shoot on, I will actually shoot portraits HDR to get the best tones that I can. So, it's important to me. I have been doing this a long time. I've been trying every possible scenario on the planet to do, say, black and white conversion or whatever to increase my bit depth. And so, I don't know everything, but I have done quite a bit. So, let's go through and talk about where bit depth falls and where it's the most critical. Well, you get bit depth falls from highlights to shadows down to shadows. So you get less in shadows and more bit depth in highlights. I have all these charts that show that. But we'll go and just let you know that the shadow detail is where you lack most of your bit depth. And in your gradients. So if you have a blue sky, you convert it to black and white and you start manipulating and you start seeing all these stair-stepping and grain and all this stuff going on. It's because there's not a whole lot of information in there to give you the gradients. So you shoot on a gray sweep. I have a model with a gray seamless. Well, I tell you what, getting that gray smooth in the background is very difficult. And so I've tried all techniques in the world to get that to do that, and you can do some things that I show in the Joel Grimes Academy, but if you don't have the information in there, it's really difficult. I love smooth gradients. So it's in the shadows and the gradients that you lack when you don't have a lot of bit depth. Okay, so here's a chart. I don't want to bore you guys or get too complicated or technical, but let's take a look at this chart. Here is the bit depth from 8-bit down to 32-bit. So this is values in color per channel. So you get 256 values per channel in 8-bit. That's a JPEG. 12-bit, that's the first camera I had, was 4,000 values per channel. 14-bit is 16,000 roughly. 16-bit is about 65,000. But look at 32-bit. It's 4 billion values of color per channel. That is a huge increase. Again, we won't see that because you're going through all these things like a computer and processing and then to a print. But to let you know that if I get to, and I can capture in 32-bit, I have a ton more information than I did if I would just stick with a 14-bit capture. Or especially if I worked in 8-bit. That's terrible. You don't want to try to manipulate a JPEG, 8-bit JPEG. There's nothing there. Maybe a little bit in the highlights, but the shadows is terrible. You ever try to pull out a shadow detail in a JPEG? It's just like mush or noise and lots of grain. All right, so let's go look at the shadow detail. This is an important little information. 8-bit, I only have 4 bits of information to shadows. That's the 10 steps of the zones. So it's the bottom shadow zone. Get 32-bit and 12-bit. 256 in 14-bit, 1,000 roughly in 16-bit. But look in 32-bit, you get 68 million bits of information in the shadows. So that will tell you right there how important it is if you can shoot an HDR and get it to where you can get and work in 32-bit, you will get a huge amount of increase in your ability to manipulate. So let's take a look. Oh wait, here's a couple images. I just threw these up here just to kind of show you when I work in black and white and landscapes, look at the tones, look at the values. I want the greatest gradients and tones that I can in my image. When I manipulate the image, I love black and white. It's really, to me, one of the more, especially I like my landscapes and stuff. So, where I'm going to show you an image here. This is the image we're going to work on right here. It's an image of Death Valley. And the reason why I chose this, probably not an award-winning photograph, but maybe it is, you know, maybe, but it's the gradient in the sky that I want to show you how amazing it is to manipulate that and get the results we want. So let's get over to, we're going to close that out. Here are my 9 images, because I stitched this. I shot my Canon EOS R with I think a 2470 2.8 version. It's the only version they have. It's the RF lens, and I have my nodal point. I think my nodal point was off a little bit because when you zoom it in and out, you have to change the nodal point, and I was in a hurry, and I think it's a little off because you'll see that in a minute. But I stitched it, shot 3 images in 3 different positions, and I'm going to grab the sky here. This is the top part. So here's the bottom, here's the middle, and then here's the sky. That's the 3 positions that are the normal exposures. So let's take the normal exposure on the sky, and let's go through a standard 14-bit processing conversion to black and white, and let's see what kind of results we get. We're going to blow it up and look at the noise and the grain. All right, so Command R, it takes me over to Bridge and RAW. Command R is RAW shortcut, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to take, and we're going to hit black and white, so that automatically converts it to black and white. And I'm going to take over here, and I'm going to go do the Ansel Adams, the black sky. Now when he shot film, he put a red or an orange filter in front of his on his lens, and that would make the sky darker. In digital, you actually take the blue slider and move it to the left. Now, I would never go that drastic right off the bat. I would do some gradients, and we'll show you that in a minute. But I'm going to push it. I'm going to push the limits of it to show you how what 14-bit looks like and what 32-bit or 16-bit and 32-bit looks like. So now we could do other things, like we can move the highlights around and stuff, but we're not going to do that right now. So we're going to go just do one slider. It's the blue slider to the left. That'll make it really simple. We're going to open it up. Let's take a look at it. It's going to come over here in Photoshop, and we're going to blow it up to 200%. Oh, I can't see that. Let me hold on a second. I want to see at the scale on the bottom, so I make sure I get it. There it is, 200%. Okay, so we're going to bring it over here, and I'm going to drop it right there. So look at right here, all this noise that's going on here. We got some other artifacts going on here. That's not important right now. We'll deal with that in a minute. All right, so that is the standard 14-bit approach. Now I got to open this up, and I got to go back to default here, reset, say done. That way I'm going to do my HDR here. It's going to reset this. All right, so now let's grab the 3 exposures, and we're going to go and do the HDR that is through Bridge, and it is something I've used, and it also has the ability to stitch and do HDR at the same time. But let's just do the HDR on the sky and do the same thing. Command R, Command A selects all 3. I'm going to Control right click. We're going to say merge to HDR. And we're going to align the image, that's fine. Nothing else. We'll say merge. We have to name it. We're going to call this Death Valley Test. Oh, we'll call it 16-bit. Okay. Oh, we got to drop it into my stitch. There we go. All right. Now we go and convert it to black and white. We are going to take the slider and go to the blue all the way there, and we hit open, and it will open as a smart object, which I've set to the default to do that. And let's take a look at it. And again, this is a step up, but let's see how much we went. So let's go Command I'm going to plus up to there. Let's get it over in the same exact position. All right, right there. Okay, so that is a 16-bit HDR. This is 14-bit. Not a lot of difference, is there? It should be a lot more, but it's technically supposed to be a 2-bit increase in bit depth, except Adobe, when you really work in 16-bit, it's only 15-bit plus 1 point something. Someone explained this to me. So you only gain 1 bit of information. Not good. So let's go and redo this now, and we're going to go and do it in 32-bit. So this is a little different. This is the older way of doing it, and Adobe's changed a few things since when I first started, and I used to be able to have a workaround to where I could get it and actually bring it up as a 32-bit file. We're going to process it in 32-bit, but when it spits it out as a 16-bit. But we've done all our manipulation in 32-bit. So take a look at this. We're going to go up to Tools, Photoshop, Merge to HDR Pro. Now it's got to bring every image into Photoshop, open up, so this takes a little longer than the other way. So if you're doing a lot of HDRs, this is a little bit more time consuming, but if you're going to hang this on the wall, put it in a gallery and sell it for maybe millions of dollars, I don't know. You want to make sure that you do it right, and a little extra is not going to hurt. All right, so we're going to go and we want it to 32-bit. We want it to complete toning in Adobe Camera Raw. We say yes, go to Tone, ACR, and it's going to bring me over to Bridge. Now, I wish Adobe would allow us to save this as a smart object or as a DNG, but they don't. I will keep talking to them. Not that I have a voice, but all right, so we're going to convert to black and white, and we're going to go take our blue slider all the way to the left. We're going to say OK, and take a look at this, folks. We're going to blow it up 200%. Let's go over here, and look how smooth that is. So let's go back to our 14-bit. Look at all the grain in there. Look at our 16-bit. Not a whole lot better. And then here it is, beautiful smooth transitions in that from the darker to the lighter. So as if we bring it out, you can really see how smooth this is. So let's go to our 50%. Oh, I can't do that. 50%. And we'll look at this one at 50%. So that's your 14-bit, that's your 16-bit, and that's your 32-bit. So do you see where the advantage is here? The smooth gradients. Now, I didn't do any manipulation out, so I didn't do like dehaze and my contrast and exposure and all that. That would even increase the noise more if I kept pushing the limits on the 14-bit, the 16-bit, and then of course the 32-bit will give me a smoother end result all the way around. So I'm just taking one slider and showing you the difference that it makes from one slider. So that's pretty amazing that I can get that results in my black and white. So let's now take a look at me putting this whole thing together for you. So what we're going to do is we're going to get out of these. Let's get rid of these. So let me show you how I go, and we're going to put the whole thing together. So actually, let's go over here, and we're going to get rid of these because I don't want them in there. All right. That was my test I did earlier. So let's go back to Raw. We're going to go over here, pick my 9 images. We're going to start on the bottom one first. So we pick the 3 bottom images, and we're going to go to Tools, Photoshop, Merge to HDR Pro. And we're going to make this image look like $1,000,000 something I can hang on the wall, put in a gallery. All right, here we go. Complete toning and ACR. Here we go. Now in this case, I'm going to do a little bit of an adjustments. We're going to do what I would normally do to a black and white image, landscape, and then we're going to apply that same adjustment to all of the other two stitched or images, so I can stitch them. So it's going to take us time, and this is one of the problems with doing this, is that it does take its time. Okay, so we're going to take our highlights all the way to the left. On the shadows, we're going to bring it up a little bit, not too much. I'm going to check my white point, so I hold the Option down and I slide it to the right until it starts to show up. There it is. So that's my white point right there. Black point, we'll do the same. Let's go, oop, there's the black point. Okay, now we're going to add a little bit of texture, just a little snapness, because I love black and white, snappy pictures. Let's go and do just a tad, just a little bit of contrast. Now I can't see the sky, that's another image, but we're going to come down here. We're going to let's take the orange slider first. So let's take a look. I'm going to manipulate the mountains there just a little bit. Let's see. Let's go here. Let's take that yellow a little bit more. There's no green in there. Not much aqua. Blue. Okay, so here's my blue slider. I got to be careful because I want to, I'm going to manipulate it. I want to go fairly smooth on it. So let's go about there. And what does purple do? Purple doesn't really do a whole lot. Magenta, not a whole lot. All right. So we're going to save this. Well, I don't have to, but I save it here. So I'll save the settings so I know. Let's just do it. I'm going to show you how to do that. Save. We're going to save it, and we're going to call it my black and white test. Let's just do that. I'm going to overwrite the one I did here, just in case I screw it up and I can't remember what I did on the, it should be just previous. So that's the first one. Oh, and then we're going to save this. This is where it gets tricky. We're going to save the file as a TIFF, because I'm going to use this in PTGui. Okay, so we're going to call this bottom. Okay. We're going to say, I'm on a Macintosh, say okay. And then we'll get out of this. All right, so let's go to, here we go, to our second set. Exact same steps. Tools, Photoshop, merge to HDR Pro. You know, eventually you probably can do this in your sleep if you do it enough times. But when you see the end results, you'll go, yep, it's worth it. All right, we're going to go and do previous conversion, or I've got it saved as I can load the settings. So let's just go over here to previous conversion. There we go. Say okay. Save it. I could do an action button here to do that, to save this a little bit of time, but I didn't do it. So we're going to call this, I don't know what I call this, middle. Oops. All right. Okay, we're going to get out of here because we don't need it in Photoshop anymore. Let's go back to bridge, and now we get to do the top. Now, if you didn't do a stitching scenario, you wouldn't have to do all this. But, whoops, I didn't want to do that. Cancel. That's the old system. I want to go up here. So we're going to go to Tools, Photoshop, merges Photoshop HDR Pro, and going back to this. So, why did I stitch this? I use tilt shift lenses all the time, but this is a nodal point system. I did it because I increased my megapixels. So no matter what camera I'm using, I can do about a little over almost 2.5 times the increase of megapixels. And so that's when I make a big print on the wall. In fact, it's hard to see in here in my office. I've got big prints. I got about a 45 by 60 inch print hanging over here. And so that's what I like to do, is make big prints. So previous conversion is all we need to do here. Say OK. Save as. TIFF. And we're going to call this top. Now, I could merge this in Photo Merge in Photoshop, which I do almost 90% of all my landscapes. But in doing that, I discovered something. I was a little off on my nodal point. So I'm going to go and do it in PTGui. Oop, I want to go here. We're going to grab those. That's why I saved it as a TIFF. So go over here, PTGui. PTGui is a little bit better at solving the stitching. We're going to align the images, and yes, there it is. There's a little bit off on the top and bottom. Fine, don't worry about that. I'm going to go over here to create panorama. We're going to save it as a PSB. We want to make sure it's 16-bit. We're not going to lose that. We're going to flatten the layers. We don't need those layers. Say OK. And we're going to say create a panorama. Now, if I did a tilt shift lens, photo merge in Photoshop would have been fine. But because I used my nodal point and I kind of was in a hurry, did not think I was going to be using this image to teach you guys something. So here we go. We're going to double click there. There's our beautiful, it should be 16-bit, but we processed it in 32-bit. So let's crop it and let's make the magic happen here. I'm going to show you how I do my final of this image. So let me get my Wacom pen out, and let's make this dead center in the horizon is pretty much dead center. Don't have to do that, but I'm going to do it anyways. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to make a levels adjustment layer. We're going to go over to the gradient tool over here, and we want the linear, not the circular. And we're going to pull from the top down, so I hold the shift key down so it's a straight shot. And I had my black as a foreground, so we want to flip that, inverse it, come back over here, hit that little, I always call this the crown, but I want to go to my properties. And we're going to pull that gradient down a little bit here. We want some cool looking gradients going there. Now I'm not stuck there yet, so we're going to do it again. So let's go to levels. We're on the gradient, we're on the linear, and we pull it from the bottom. Bottom I'm not going to do is drastic. Let's flip it. And let's do the properties, and we're going to pull a little bit from the bottom. Not done yet with this. Okay, so we're going to go and do again. We're going to do levels. This is kind of flat here. I got some beautiful stuff going on here, but sky looks pretty good from the almost pure white to pure black. But this is flat, so we're going to go, and I'm just going to look at the bottom here. We're going to increase my contrast on the bottom here. Don't worry about the top part. And if I could have done this in RAW, it would have been much better. Just the way it is, folks. I wish Adobe would allow me to do that. So now we can take the mask, black, whoops. I'm going too fast. Jets are flying over the top. We're going to take the brush. We have black, 100%. And we're going to black out this. If I hit my backspace right under my delete, it shows me where I've done it. Whoops, I hit the X again. So I can kind of see if I missed any parts here. I don't want it to hit the mountains here. So we hit the backspace again. So that's increased a little bit of the contrast in that. I might move it a little bit more. Oops, let's go make sure my mask, looks like my mask is a little off here. I missed a spot right there. I could actually see it over there in that little, oh, in the very top I missed a little section. Okay, so we hit the backspace again, or backslash again. Now I'm going to, let's do another levels. We're going to do the gradient on circular this time. Just a little circular gradient right here. And we are going to bring down the outside just a little bit there. We're going to go to the top. I'm going to go Shift Command N. We're going to take the mode from normal to overlay, fill it 50% gray. And I'm going to go and just increase that highlight just a little bit. So I go to my dodge. Let's go to about 11%. Make sure I have a soft brush. I do. And we'll see here. We're going to just bring this up just so your eye is drawn in just a little bit more to that middle part there. This is subjective. You may not want to do this much. And then let's go down to small. So let's take a look at my gradient, my top gradient here. We can probably feather that back a little bit. Now I haven't flattened it yet, so there's a little bit, just the way Photoshop works, a little bit of wobbles in there. But I also have a little lighter spot there, so let's go to my burn, maybe about 4%, and I'm just going to burn down just a little bit of that section right there. And if I go really small, I can kind of see where it needs a little extra. I am burning to 4%. Yes, I'm on my correct layer. All right. Let's go back and we're going to smooth that out just a little bit more. We're actually going to go, and I'm going to go Command T. Oh, wrong one. The one right above that. Command T. And I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Hold the Shift key down. So it's a little smoother transitions here. And I can also take this mask, get my brush, and I want black, and just take that so it's not hitting the bottom part here. But I still have a nice gradient there. And once again, I can feather this depending what you want to do. If I had clouds in there, drama, a full moon or something that happened, I didn't have a full moon. Actually, there was a moon, but it was, I think, the other side of me, other direction. All right, let's kind of look at that. Now, I went a little fast on that, and I think that I could probably go back and maybe make that transition a little bit better if I had more time. We're going to go Shift Option Command E. That flattens it. Now you can see how smooth that is. And the gradients. Let's go in here. Smooth as a baby's bottom. I raised 4 boys, so I know what that's all about. I love that smooth, those tones. And again, I would, if I'm going to make this a final, which the other one I did, I went in there and I cleaned up some little stuff in there to make it look really good. But there you go. How you can work in HDR 32-bit, get the tones where you want them. So what does this tell you? Photoshop gives us that extra option in Bridge, but it doesn't give me the 32-bit option that I have in the older system through Tools, Photoshop, merged to Photoshop Pro, HDR Pro. A little longer, but in the end, I think it's worth it. So I would do your own experiment. So people come up to me and they say, well, how many transitions do you do? I say, well, I do three exposures to my HDR. I do, say, a stop each way or 2 stops each way. And they go, well, I do 13 transitions, exposures. Okay. I've tried it. I don't think there's a big difference, but maybe you can come up with something. So go out and do your own experiments. And then you go and you become an expert at this, and then you're teaching us all how to do the ultimate black and white conversion. So there's something new to be discovered every day. Photoshop keeps adding new things, and so you got to keep up on it. And so I keep, every once in a while, I go back and I revisit this and relook at it, and I'm glad that I was able to. And this whole tutorial came out by someone asking me as a question, Joel, how do you get your black and whites? How do you do the conversion? So this became a result of that. I hope you enjoyed this. I got hopefully more information I can pass on to you guys in the future. I want to keep doing that. So thank you for joining me. And as I always say, go out, be an artist, create an income, or be an artist, live your dream, create an income with your camera. That's the ultimate joy I've had in doing this for 40 years. I hope you can do that too.